Yes, global grand rising, global greetings, ones and ones, twos and twos, threes and threes, wherever you are logged in at this point. Um, you know, as I rise this morning and about to start my morning meditation, I bumped into this past radio program in Jamaica, and based on the topic, I opted to I opted to delve in a little bit. Now, one of the things that jumped out at me, and this is probably why I labeled the recording in such a manner, is that as I listened to the engagement, and it's not something new. I've heard the discussions several times in Jamaica, but just listening to the exchange just made me, recognize that we on St. Kitts and Nevis really need to give a lot more credit to the vision of the late Right Honorable Llewellyn Bradshaw. He would have seen the vision, and he would have had the foresight to do what seemingly Jamaica didn't do, and maybe some other Caribbean islands, because I think there was this popular song. I don't know if it was Antigua or Barbados. Jack don't want me to bathe on my beach. Jack, and there was that issue, right? I don't remember. I think it's Gabby. Was the author of that song, the Calypsonian Gabby. Anyway, like Bradshaw would have addressed that on St. Kitts and Nevis. However, the issue still lingers in Jamaica. So I will, as we begin this, you might just be seeing the flag in the background because I'll step away for a few minutes. Um, I will step away for a few minutes. I'll be right here, but if there's any need for me to interject, I will pop in and interject at any point and add my little 2 cents here and there if necessary. But I want you to take in this discussion, because sometimes, we are just limited to the issues that affects our specific geographic local, at the time. A lot of the times we don't necessarily pay attention to some of the issues that's going on in other Caribbean territories. Sometimes we look at it as, oh, that's their issues, I don't live there, so I don't have to deal with that. But it's good to pay attention because sometimes, these scenarios sometimes, as they would say, set precedents. Sometimes, depending on what issues you may have to deal with in various territories, especially for me, especially when I look at the territories that were all colonized by Britain. So I pay a kind of attention to them to see how similar sometimes issues that we have, and sometimes how from people perspective how it is dealt with, and also from an administrative level how it is dealt with. So with no further ado, I think I've given enough time for folks who probably just jumped onto the live, or just see it and is getting in. So I think I've given you enough of that time for us to jump into the discussion. Now, this starts off with a clip from a prior program where the presenter would have interviewed a minister of government in Jamaica, and based on his response, I guess this is kind of what propelled this further discussion on the issue, and I guess probably why they would have used it as the introduction to this edition. So let's get into this.
Some of the time thank you so much for joining Iria Femin, especially for coming in on this segment of the program. You talk about lawlessness at Little Duns River and that there will be a strong security presence when it is reopened. What does that mean in reality?
That means that there will be a strong security presence.
You mean police presence, security guard?
Both.
Both police and security guard. All right, and in terms of the lawlessness that you spoke about, what did this look like?
Well, there were the typical public order issues, but we'd also seen a level of violence creep into a few conflicts that had taken place between business operators that operated in and around the space. And we had to intervene. Ultimately, public safety has to be the paramount concern.
Mm-hmm. Can you say whether the opening Little Duns River is the best way to go by itself? And I'm not questioning you opening it at all. I think it needs to be reopened. We have been marching for that, and I know it's in the courts. But what about the greater issue of the colonial era law on the books that provides for this kind of a situation where a space can be taken from the people of Jamaica, regardless of how long they've been using it, at the government's
You'd appreciate that I'm at the pink run for cancer, and that's a much deeper subject area.
Do you have any?
I know. I wouldn't be diving, not just to be.
But don't dive too deep. Just
I'm not diving at all. I'm sure.
Are you concerned about the law?
About it another time.
No, but are you concerned about the law? Do not walk away, Mr. Samotra.
I am about to, admittedly, but no, we came to support. No, to be fair, we came to support the Cancer Society and their pink run. There is a major subject that requires national discourse, which is beach access. And I think in the coming weeks we will have that national discourse.
No, but beach access is not separate from the Cancer Society, because a lot of us.
It is actually very.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. As a matter of fact, it is the beach for a lot of cancer survivors and people who are going through these illnesses. This is where they get therapy.
I'm very happy to have come supported them this morning. I will speak to you another time on the issue of beach access and land ownership in Jamaica. At an appropriate time, as I think it was a rather inappropriate stab at me at this moment. But we'll take it on. Yes, ma'am. It was an inappropriate stab. But I'm happy to discuss any national issue anytime once we've agreed that's what we're discussing.
But you're filling Shahini Robinson's shoes, and this is one of her pet peeves. She was in the studio almost every Sunday morning. She was one of the most concerned about not just Little Duns River, but she was also very concerned about the Roaring River. She was the person who gave us all the information about what was happening with Roaring River. It was her pet peeve. So to say that I'm stabbing at you in Northeast St. John, where the beach is our livelihood, I think it's very interesting.
Well, I think it was very unfortunate that you raised that at this particular time. You could have invited me to discuss that anytime you ready.
We were trying to get you all week to discuss it, but I'm not quite sure what happened. I mentioned it this morning that we're going to get you for next week.
Quite possibly, but we'll see. All right?
Well, I really do hope you come on.
Sure, wish you the best. All right?
Okay, so before we get into the rest of the discussion, that was the engagement with the politician. What are your thoughts on that? And one of the reasons why I asked that, as I hear that exchange, it drags my memory to a conversation I keep hearing. I shouldn't say keep hearing, but I heard several times on another radio show back on St. Kitts and Nevis in relation to, I don't know the fullness of the story, so I'm not necessarily in a position to really speak on it so much, but based on what I've heard, it's, well, I wouldn't say similar to this, but it's a scenario where a town hall meeting was organized, seemingly to discuss the budgets and the things that are going to be surrounding the budget. And based on what I gathered from calls and an engagement I heard on another radio program, is that seemingly someone in the audience started to ask questions that were not necessarily in relation to the topic at hand, or at least what was on the agenda for the meeting and I don't know if that person was shut down, and it caused seemingly that's how it sounded, that person was shut down, and folks were disappointed that something like that was done, because there's a feel that, as the politician, you should be there to answer to the people's call. But from my vantage point, I could understand an open forum session, and if there's an open forum session, then the people would, be open to ask whatever. But if you organize a meeting on a specific topic with a specific agenda, I would expect that if you come to the meeting, you would come with the intent to address the topic. Now, in regards to if there are other questions that are outside of the topic, I find that you can be tactful in responding and say, this is not necessarily the forum for this. We are addressing this issue at this time. Maybe we can deal with that at another time. And I say that based on this introduction that we just had, where the minister was at a separate function, promoting something else, and was questioned specific in relation to something else. However, the presenter tried to explain or rationalize the reason behind asking the questions, which are reasonable. However, that is the situation. So you can weigh in your views and your opinion where that is concerned. However, that was the backdrop that was set in regards to this part of the discussion. So let's get into this and hear some more, get more informed, as I would say, in relation to this specific issue.
If you're just joining, we're speaking with Dr. Devon Taylor and Dr. Marcus Garth. We're looking at the legal struggle surrounding access to the beach, river, and land here in Jamaica. Just putting it in historical context, recent history, because we're looking at 1830s after emancipation, and then during the period of colonialism, which is and so-called leading into independence. So we're looking now at talking about 1950s, 1940s, 1950s. This is when some of us parents were born. A lot of people still living who were born in those times. So they would remember some of those conversations. Say, Dr. Garth?
Yes, definitely. Yes, mm-hmm.
All right. But we recall growing up for those of us in Jamaica, like myself, a little bit older than you, Marcus, and Devon, we grew up in the 80s, and and we had access to almost every beach, for example, from say, and I'm talking about where I grew up, say from Port Maria all the way to Trelawney. There was hardly any beach that you couldn't access, and if you couldn't, you could still go through the hotel. Remember, we could go through one of the hotel foyers for the one we couldn't access in on the beach. Right. So we don't have access to any of those now. So I want to go forward to that, to out of those conversations, what happened to skew that whole intention in this direction that we find ourselves now? The intention, which was the spirit of 1956. So let's talk about 1956 and what happened.
Right. So that 56 law then was supposed to be a government intervention that would somehow sort of rebalance, and ensure the public access was protected. So it created, the regime where the government would issue these licenses and they would be able to regulate and to ensure public access and the enjoyment of all of the coastline of Jamaica. Right? And so that was supposed to be the mechanism. It didn't guarantee rights, but it created this mechanism where government could determine, right, the conditions in which persons would get these land rights that are alongside the beach and where people could be able to access the beach. So what has happened thereafter is that with that government intervention, which was supposed to be a kind of control mechanism, really, right, has gotten to be really facilitating what is termed development. And so as we looked at the prison landscape, in the post-colonial, in the independence era now, right? That's how we can grow the economy, and tourism is being seen as one of these major ways to do so. And, beach access and sun, sand, and sea being a big part of that. Then came the push, right, to then have the tourism product, right, be something that will be separated from the public beach access, and it seems that the public rights got sacrificed in that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And that has led to where we are.
Okay, the transition.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Devon.
Yeah, so if I would add that, of course, all of these things were intentional, and the act actually sets the condition for that. So one thing it did, it put all the power of regulating the space in the under of one minister. So whoever that minister is, that minister can determine how beaches are used, who gets to use beaches, right? And that was one of the big flaws. It's a concentration of power, which is undemocratic. In our legislation and giving that all to one minister. So, the act, as I mentioned earlier, have an entitlement clause to the property owners. It has a termination clause that basically address, any fisher folks who were using these spaces pre-1956 would continue to do so. And then we see that, if that is broken, then those fisher folks would lose the right, to continue to do so, or the generation thereafter. But the law also built into it, and we can talk about that a little bit, the Prescription Act of 1882, was built into it as a kind of a safeguard trigger. So, if things fail, then one can now go into the court to seek, redress to address, the loss of access, because the land has been closed off and there was conservation easement, or the easement that was used to the beach would no longer happen. So the concentration of power, it's up a condition right now that dependent upon who that minister is and what that minister feel like doing, as Marcus mentioned regarding quote-unquote development, then he or she can do so. And so we never really had, a right. What we had was a permission, and that permission controlled by government and controlled by private interests. So the public, as Marcus mentioned, rights have never been enshrined to be general, right, or to be unfettered, right? It's never been. So we're always using beaches.
One of the things that I want to do is to look at the act a little and those parts of it. So it's just so our listeners can understand a bit more what we're talking about, because it can be a bit abstract, because we're talking with you know how it is, you're dealing with law, you're talking about act, and so we can go over people's heads, but it's pretty clear in the act itself. And Marcus, you were careful to underscore that this was a control mechanism. Right. So if we could look at some of those problematic areas, do any of you have that with you that we could look at?
Sure. So what the beach license system does, right? It gives the government the right to determine who will be given a license by the government to potentially have exclusive control over a beachfront access property, right? To be able to manage the space, to run a business on the space, and to exclude persons from the space, right? So we have the two regimes. We have the land ownership, of course, comes with the land rights, which gives persons the right to exclude, right? So if you have a beach which is only access to private land, then that private landowner's rights are going to naturally clash, because that private landowner can put a gate, a fence, concrete wall, and prevent public access because he has the land rights to do that. Then you have the beach license system, the government gives the license to the person. So within the determination, right, both of giving title to private landowners and giving beach licenses to people who apply, there is no guaranteed protection for the public right to that space. Right? Those public rights are not guaranteed, they're not necessarily considered And if they are considered what we see them not considered an illegal shooting, and the private landowners, right?
So that's why I say that we have to thank Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw and St. Kitts and Nevis, because Bradshaw made sure that the people's rights were enshrined. These people who are coming in and who are living there were to be made known, and it was to be made absolutely clear that the beaches and St. Kitts and Nevis will not be owned by anybody, and the public and St. Kitts and Nevis should have access. My friend tell me don't use the word should, But however, according to the way that the law is structured, the people are able to have access. Let me put it that way. Are able to have access to the beach based on their fundamental rights. Jamaica at this point is still struggling with that, in terms of this is what the people are crying for. The people are saying that, well, how they have this thing sorted out. And this is the thing, for me, one of the things for me. I am really praying that our people really begin to wise up and really go and do some research and seek to understand government and how it works, and the constitution of your country, and how these things work. Because until we do, these folks who we elect to represent us, who are our servants, not our bosses, are going to continue to hoodwink us and play a lot of reverse psychological games on us. And a lot of these things are going to continue if we don't seek to educate ourselves and inform ourselves and put ourselves in a position where we could check them. And we don't necessarily need to get a lawyer or go to the court if we need to, yes, but we can fact check them, and we can check them based on, the things that we know. And then the games that they continue to play in terms of divide and rule and using reverse psychology and all that would not be able to work, But it takes us, that mindset, that shift, that paradigm shift that is so necessary in these times, But let's continue with the discussion.
Or the tourism incentive, which is the people who are operating tourism-based businesses, And so the
yes,
public rights get marginalized.
Yes. So the point you were making, Devon, was we have been using the beach. So even when I reference the fact that growing up in the 80s, we could, use a beach from Negril Point to Morant Point, you're saying that in essence, we had this access, but we didn't have the right to access.
Absolutely, because the law actually states that no one shall have any inherent right in or over the foreshore. And the foreshore is defined as the wet sand area, right, where wave washes in, and it's what we call the high water mark washes back out. So that's the foreshore. In Jamaica, we technically have not defined a beach in this Beach Control Act. The act needs to be updated to international standard, where a beach constitutes both the foreshore and the backshore. We need to move to that definition. But correctly, we never have that inherent right. We never had it. The act basically states so. And then it allows, for, that regulation, that control over the space. And that's where we are. It is that, ecological space in our country that we do not have a right to. So we're in Jamaica, Highland, without a right to access beaches and rivers. And, I don't know, the people who are entrusted to protect the rights of Jamaicans need to start do a reflection. All right? Jamaicans need it. Right? We have seen the responses out there. And the responses not only from civil society, but the response is from the political class. Because both political party who control Jamaica have stated that Jamaicans must have a right to its beaches and river. This is recorded in the parliament. It's recorded on political stages. You see it printed in the media. But they have done nothing to change that legislation. And the people of Jamaica are calling out. Now, there's a lot of education that needs to continue, and that's what Jabem is really doing. We are engaging the public in this conversation, in this debate, bringing the awareness that you do not have this inherent right. And so we do not want this government to come around and say we're going to open up beach A, beach B, beach C. No, what needs to change is the law.
All right, so let's go to that law because and Dr. Goff, so you're the attorney in this space. Let us go to the law because one of the things that we heard earlier from Dr. Taylor was that so there's a caveat which speaks to how long you've been using the beach and whether or not you have a right or entitled to some level of a consideration once you've been using the beach for a certain time. He also mentioned the word prescriptive. So help us to understand that.
Right. So we have this very old law, the Prescription Act, right? Which, even though it's also a criminal law, has been, what has been useful, in this fight most recently, which speaks to the fact that if person, any class or part of the public has been using a beach and adjoining lands or roads, paths or tracks to access that beach for at least 20 years, right, then the public has thereafter the absolute and indefeasible right to use that beach and to use the adjoining adjacent roads.
What does indefeasible mean?
Indefeasible means that right is absolute and cannot be defeated. Right? Cannot be defeated. It's absolute and cannot be defeated. It's not temporary. It's not discretionary. And it would be able to therefore stand up to the private land rights of those who are challenging. Mm-hmm. The public has no such right. Mm-hmm. So it's something that cannot be overturned.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that Devon also said just now, earlier in the conversation, was he pointed to the fact that the act embodies within one minister, one person, the right to do what, or the authority to do what. Devon, you remember the point you were raising about this? So there's an authority embedded within one person. Is it in the act itself?
It is in the act. Mm-hmm. It is in the act that the minister may. The minister may. There's no that the minister should. Mm-hmm. Right? The minister may. So the minister uses his or her discretion when applying this law. Right? So as it relates to the power of that minister, the minister can get up tomorrow morning and say, you know something? All the people at Steertown who have lost access to that 4 miles ashore beachfront, I'm going to, open up, access, Mama Bay and Old Fort Bay, I'm going to open up Laughing Water, all of these places. And nobody can stop him.
The minister, to hold that line, let me just take a quick break because I don't want to break in the middle of this. As we look at the struggle, the legal struggle for beach access here on the island. Dr. Devon Taylor, Dr. Marcus Scarf on the line with me, Dr. Devon Taylor from JABEM, Dr. Marcus Scarf, attorney at law. Remind us what JABEM is, Devon.
Yes, JABEM is the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement. And, our objective is to really, push for a change in the legislation that would now come on board and would guarantee Jamaicans general and federal rights of access to all the beaches and rivers. That means we don't access them through permission, but those are now inherent and general rights.
And just before we go back to this authority that is vested in the minister may, as you talk about rivers, we focus a lot and we say beaches, but there has to be an understanding that the struggle is for we're losing access also to the rivers, to the beaches, and of course, not to mention land. So this must be known that it's not just beach. We cannot leave the rivers out of this conversation.
No, we're not leaving wetlands. You know what I mean?
Right.
So one of the things that we need to understand is that we're in this environmental era where all of these spaces are going to be are important. You know, I mean, in terms of conservation, in terms of protection, you know, of the water rights, the water resources of the country. You know, I mean, mitigation against climate change. I mean, it's all connected. That's why we always mention that beaches are not just, you know, I mean, space for commercialization. They are living ecosystems that have a role in the health of the country, all right, in the health of the nation. And we use them, you know what I mean, in many ways: recreation, spirituality, therapeutics, you know what I mean, and their commercial interest here. So, I mean, but we cannot see them as just entities to plunder, just as our settler colonialism have done. A massive amount of degradation that happens in these spaces. And there's so much damage that has been done on the North Coast. I mean, it's going to take us generations to really fix the problem.
And we'll have a conversation about that. So, but because, just in the interest of time, we'll come back to that, and we'll invite you back, Devon, because we have to also talk about the situation with the degradation here on the North Coast, the extent of the mining, and the whole works. What tourism has done, the kind of tourism that we're practicing. All right. So the minister now, the act gives the minister the authority to do what?
The act gives the minister the authority to create, open up easement, to open up access, absolute power.
In other words, to open up the beaches so people can go to the beach and people can go to the river, to not sell it off to the private sector and to lock it off from the people. So the minister has that power. Which minister, which does it say which minister?
Yes, well, I'm going to finish the point because I want to know that his action is also unchallengeable in the courts.
Unchallengeable?
Yes. And I mean, section 5155 addresses that. And if someone wants to challenge that, then he has the right to call the commissioner of police to enforce what he said needs to be done. The easement needs to open up, and anybody who will try block that, any private man will try block that, then call the commissioner of police, and the commissioner of police have to do it. Right? It is just how it's structured. Who is that minister? Now, the Beach Control Act, falls within the Ministry of Job Creation, Economic Development, and Environment, right, which sits in the office of the Prime Minister, which makes the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, as the head of the Beach Control Act.
But isn't Mr. Matthew Samuda a minister in that
yes,
ministry?
Minister without portfolio.
No. But this might okay. Anyway, this might explain the response last week. So Minister Samuda is also a junior minister in that ministry. The power, the authority we are talking about rests with the Prime Minister. Then, not because he is Prime Minister, but because he is the minister with responsibility for that ministry in which the Beach Control Act falls.
Absolutely. That is clear.
What does this mean legally, Dr. Goff? What are the legal implications of that?
Well, it really means that the government has, at present, and has had for many decades, the power in its hands to fix this problem in the interest and for the benefit of the people. Right? By simple parliamentary intervention, passing the required laws and policies, right, that can protect the public interest, not leave it up to discretion. And it's not only the minister too, I do want to mention, that we see that the other authorities involved in the process are similarly, we think, conflicted.
One of the things that I respect about this is the fact that the public, the people in the public is able to step forward and represent when necessary. We need to have more of this in our society and St. Kitts and Nevis, where you have lawyers, right, who are able to come out and seek to explain and bring the issues to the level of the layman, so that the average individual on the street, the average, whoever who may not necessarily be able to read, or may not have the time, or may not just get up and do that, and or may not listen to the House of Assembly and so on, right? When some of these laws and so on are passed, and some people don't go and look up these kind of things and read the Constitution and so on. So it's good when you have some legal minds come to explain. So I'm really loving this, where you have the lawyer here breaking it down so that the average person could have a better understanding. So at this point, I'll give my brethren Alan a plug. Alan Powell from Nevis, young lawyer, who I find is very instrumental in doing a lot of this, where he most times look into these things and bring some of these issues to the general public, and is open to be questioned, and especially where the legalities are concerned, he actually would take the time out to break it down and bring it down so that the simple average Joe can understand. Anyway, give thanks as we continue. Let's get back into the discussion.
In terms of that, we have NEPA, for example, who's operating and exercising the powers of the National Resources Conservation Authority and also the Beach Control Authority, right? Mm-hmm. We have the Town and Country Planning Authority, similarly, who, when they make decisions to approve development, whether for housing and primarily for hotels and these kind of things, again, there's no, it seems, legal requirement or enforcement that the public interest and public beaches and fishermen's rights be protected forthright in those decisions, right? And so we see where permits have been given to hoteliers to go and build hotels, and they're told that they can afterwards relocate the fisher folk somewhere else. That's not a proper, respectful way to deal with the public's right of access.
What about the UDC?
Right, so UDC, similarly, right, government agency supposed to be doing development, they say, not only urban, but island-wide, and so forth. Oftentimes, again, it seems decisions are leaning towards private personal interests, right, in the name of so-called development at the expense of the public access right. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no proper law, no proper procedure or enforcement to guarantee the public rights are secured. No one is talking or representing their interests, right? And the same regulator is supposed to balance the public interest with the same one granting permits to start construction and to block off and fence off public.
Which regulator is this?
Well, this is NEPA. It's primarily NEPA, applicable at their fee. Primarily NEPA is the primary environmental regulator. They're the primary one giving people permits to go and build over and to block public access and fisherman rights. It's an inherent conflict of interest because they cannot be at the same time the regulator and the same one driving development to approving these permits and not requiring any public consultation in the process.
That's like an attorney representing the accused and the defendant.
Right, and they're government regulator to be balancing and securing Jamaica and the future of Jamaica against climate change. And here we are. They're doing these developments that oftentimes require an environmental impact assessment or public consultation or to have the rights of the public and fishermen protected and guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And so who is there? If it's not the government regulator, who is there to protect the public interest?
This seems fairly simple to us listening, but why does it seem to be so complicated to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, to the Prime Minister, to the opposition, to the private sector, to everybody else? Why does it appear so complicated? Because the more we fight, even as we speak, we're losing beaches. We have been losing beaches within the last year, starting within COVID. I can tell you that we have lost more beach between COVID and now than we lost in the last 10 to 15 years.
No, you go through Marcos. No, man, go ahead. Yeah. Couple, this is just all these regulators, these politicians see the people. All right? And this is how the people allow these politicians to see them. Now, I mean, the assault on the Jamaican people, is historical to all politicians disregard, what is in the best interest of the masses or what is in the interest of, the moneyed class. So they have never seen us as people. And that is the only thing I can really, when I enter this struggle, just really start understand why is it that our leaders, our politicians, success.
Great point. And one of the reasons for that is because what is happening is a continuation of a system that we never created. And the system that we are continuing is a system that saw us exactly the way that these political representatives are dealing with it. The system was never set up and designed for us. The Westminster British colonial system that we inherit and continue was never designed for us. So a lot of the things that were in place were not necessarily in place to benefit the masses. So as the Virgin is pointing out, and this is why, I keep saying this, there is a reverse psychology that is being played, and we can only see it see how effective it is when in 2023, like when I look at the House of Assembly, I was looking at the budget reading on Nevis for the past couple of days. And, I look at when they break for lunch or whatever. And Madam President getting up and, bowing, 3 bows. And then you have to take up a piece of wood. You have the police officer down there taking up a piece of wood that is called a mace. The mace represents the king's authority, the same king that is supposed to be, not supposed to be, the same king that was the oppressor of the same people, using the same system to oppress the same people, who now have removed those people, have people who look like me and you and come from me and you, but still uphold that system that was never designed for us. And some of them knowingly do so, knowing that the system was not designed and knowing that they're just continuing to perpetuate a system that is just beneficial to them and their supporters and their cronies, and is beneficial for them to seek to continue to maintain that type of system. And so the divide and rule game continues, and the reverse psychological games continues until we, the masses, open up. And then you have people like this, like, I listen to this discussions, and I wish sometimes we have this level of discussion amongst our people on a regular. Anyway, let's get back into this.
Ignore the call, the plea to access these spaces, and they make a lot of promises and none of them fulfill. Now we know, that both political parties have recognized the beach access problem. This is why Mata Somoda went on a platform in St. Anne's Bay to say that the Downs River is going to be open, and you should hear the applause in the crowd. So the people, even people who are supporters of the Jamaica Labour Party, know that there's an access right problem. When the PMP, Mark Bolin made it a platform, of the People's National Party in the arena, the place erupted. Okay, so the PMP,
and Mark Golding himself spoke about this at length. It was it was right up top on his agenda, and he spoke about it at length, which was surprising to me, to tell you the truth. So the point, though, is that this is being used now on the political platform, but it's not moving from the platform to the space to change the legislation. You talk about changing the legislation. What does it take, Dr. Goff, to change that legislation? What's the process?
Well, the process is quite simple. The Beach Control Act, simply requires firstly that all public beaches be declared as such by the government, right? All public beaches be declared as such by the government and protected as such, right? And then we have to remove these ministerial powers that seem to be, untouchable, right? And this final thought of power he has. Then we need to ensure that, and I think all consideration of applications for construction along the coastline or otherwise, all permits for hotel and other kind of resort development must consider the public interest, public beaches, recreational and or fishing rights of the public in those spaces. They must have environmental impact assessment, so we all can assess how is it going to impact the water quality, the freedom of accessing the beach, and the freedom of livelihoods of each fisherfolk. And these must be things that are publicly known and accessible that we can all have an input, right? To say we don't want this hotel in our space, or the condition upon which we will allow you to come into the space is that you acknowledge the rights of the public, have no sort of access blockage and so forth, and you maintain the public space, right, in the future in perpetuity forever.
Mm-hmm. All right. I want to take a break and come back to look now at where we are with the legal struggle, because I know that a lot is being done, both by yourself, Dr. Goff, along with Jabin and others, to change this status quo. Let me take a quick break and come back. Looking at the legal struggle.
Okay, hold on. Well, in this YouTube video, they would have cut out the commercials and so on. So she's back now from the break, right? This is where she's back now from the break. However, I wanted to add on a little bit on the point before the break, right? The lack of consultation with the people and the allowance of the lack of consultation with the people is due to that point that I'm making earlier, the reverse psychological games that are being played, because the people allow this because they feel like the people act as if these people are their bosses, when the people are not realizing that they are the ones who really need to hold these people accountable. Like how our system is structured, right? Like it's one of the craziest scenarios. Like you're the boss, you're paying, and you then sit back and let your employees dictate to you how they're gonna do what they do. They don't come and consult with you. They spend your money how they want to spend it, and then come back and tax you some more to get some more. And you sit back and you don't consult, you don't ask them, you don't challenge them. When you do, they tell you, they say, ignore the noise. They say you grudge them. They say you all kind of things they come and say. When all you are doing as a boss, because even if it's 10 cents of my tax, you get in, may you boss, because 1 cent, point whatever out of a cent, go towards your salary. So may you boss. Don't get it twisted. And until the people get to that point, where the people start to realize that, so like I say, it's that reverse psychological game that is being played, why we the masses feel away when we hold them accountable, because some of us end up taking sides, play this like it's a game. Oh, you're on this side. And so then also, this brings another point into the question, because now when you do no challenge, that's part of the game that they try to play. So they try to pin you to the opposition when all you are doing is challenge them as a boss based on the job that they are doing. We hire you to do a job. You say that you're going to go there to do these things for us, but a lot of the things that you're seeking to do for us, you're not consulting with us. So who are you really doing it for? Because if you're going to do something for me that you say is going to benefit me, well, it is only fair you're coming into my community to do whatever. It's only fair that you come to the community and speak to the community, let the community know, well, this is what we are thinking, this is what we are planning, and we are hoping that, this, then you get the feedback, and then you work based on the feedback. But a lot of these people do it the other way around. They do whatever they say they want to do, and then you speak out, and then they say you hate them, you're fighting against them, you don't like the party. You become labeled as opposition. How? How? All a part of the game, all a part of the psychological games that's being played. Anyway, like, let's get back into the continuation. I just highlighted that to show you, as the masses, that you need to really take that time out for yourself to understand government, understand the constitution, pay attention to the House of Assembly, read up on these bills and so on, so that you could be more informed and realize that you're the bosses. Like, this is the only system where employers allows employees to feel as if they're the boss and treat you like they're the boss, and you accept it. And then some of you don't even just accept it. Some of you get upset when that section of the bosses decide, no, we ain't taking it like that. We gonna challenge you. We put you there. We gonna ask the questions. And then the psychological game begins. Oh, you're opposition. You not like me. No, you're hired to do a job. I hire you to do a job. You say you're doing it for me. You're a public figure. I come and question you publicly. How does that equate to me hating you, don't like you, have a problem with your party? No. Regardless of whatever party you support, whichever one going there, that is my responsibility to check you. Students, young youths who are going to school right now, and a lot of you don't necessarily pay attention to social studies, but I was a social studies teacher, and that was one of my favorite subjects. Many people know me from an agricultural standpoint, know me as an agricultural science teacher, but social studies was one of the subjects I taught as well. And that government is one of the topics and areas in that. And I found, in teaching that subject, because I had to learn the information in order to present it, it helped me a lot. And so a lot of that still sticks with me. And I would encourage a lot of youths, to study social studies. So it's a very interesting subject, because it touches on a number of different areas, because social studies is actually the study of people and the environment that they live in. So as a result, you get a little bit of geography, a little bit of history, a little bit of psychology, a little bit of sociology, and all of that combined and wrap up in one subject area. Quite an interesting subject area. But as a people, y'all need to be informed. We, the masses, need to be more informed. Let's continue with the discussion.
Beach access to beach, river, and lands here in Jamaica, focusing specifically on the beaches and rivers this morning. All right, so in this last 15 minutes that we have, Marcus and Devon, I want to look at where we are now with the legal challenges, because JABEM has been doing something brilliant, which is to fight this in the courts, while it is being fought on many other sides, through civil society protests, press releases, using all the avenues that are available, inclusive of the courts. What's the situation?
Yes. So I'll just give a broad overview on Marcus, who is, the warrior who is representing, going up against all these law firms and the government. Yes. Currently, we have the Mama Day case, the Little Duns River case, the Blue Lagoon, Bob Marley cases in the courts. I mean, there are many more that we have in the pipeline working on. A Cooper case. The most recent one is in Lawland as well. So, I mean, this is where space, the judiciary space that we have to go down. And we're using the prescription Act of 1882, and Marcus can speak more about that, in order to really protect these spaces, because we have really nothing else that the public can do right now apart from what we're doing in terms of the advocacy, and it's gaining a foothold, all right, and it is allowing us to spotlight the issue that forces it in the political arena, because the solution is right there. And while it's not something that is partisan, it is something that is completely political. That is where the solution must be. But we have to do also the judicial part. And the Prescription Act is not the end all of it. There are other legal roads that are under exploration right now. Because one thing that we know we cannot allow to continue is for exclusion to continue. And I'd like even the developers, to understand that, a conservation, protection of the space and changing the kind of relationship that Jamaicans have with the coastline is in the best interest of their product. So, if you continue along that line, the degradation is not, residing only to the North Coast. We see the South Coast being developed now. The degradation is going to continue all around Jamaica. And in fact, the entire coastal space will be destroyed. So legal, what we are doing is not only to just open the access, it is to expand environmentalism, to protect the space. And this is why we are trying to communicate that messages to them as well. That is necessary.
Yes. All right. So let me go to Marcus now, because so you are the attorney who's been funding all of this. You've been obviously a great team with JABEM through the courts, ensuring that the challenges are heard before a judge. This is pretty interesting. Help us to understand now, what's that process like and where we are with it now?
Right. Well, this is what we have to the legal option that is most helpful at this point. Ultimately, the public should not have to, go into court to fight all these struggles and individual each basis, because, again, the government has the power in its hands, the power of legislation, right, to seem to protect all these beaches with one swoop of the legal authority have. But going to the court, I think, has been, challenging in some parts, because, again, we're arguing with private landowners oftentimes, who feel threatened, and so are very, very sometimes, hostile and defensive, and don't want to acknowledge any sort of public rights and so forth. And, we see that this is, again, something that is a retrograde step, but we can't even acknowledge them that the public have rights, and the Bishop Folk have rights. Even to get that type of acknowledgement, I think, has been difficult, and so I would just fight these battles on a case-by-case basis, is necessary, but unfortunately so, because there's so many beaches, I just think we've got so many, and we're losing them as we speak. As we fight one court case this week, another one rises up, or an issue rises up, which needs to go to court next week, because it's a widespread problem that we've been facing, as we know, for decades,
So you've got how many cases before a judge now in the courts?
There are four, and they're not nine. We have in court at present.
That must be a pretty expensive venture, JABEM.
Well, it is, and we have Marcus, who is, of course, not only, I would say, attorney in this struggle, but Marcus is a champion for the rights of Jamaican people. A humanitarian, that is standing in here, and of course, JABEM don't just see Marcus as an attorney, but a partner in the struggle. And Jamaica needs to understand, and we throw this challenge out there to the legal fraternity that, you sit on this island, and many of you sit in the middle class squarely and in the upper class. And you understand what is going on, because all of these want of the necessary, education to actually see the problem. And we're standing here, alone, with the people of Jamaica fighting. And we're asking you to take a real look in the mirror and see if this is something that you want to be on the right side of history. And,
Yeah, well, At this point, I'm seeing 59 minutes and 30 something seconds. I don't know if this thing is just 1 hour, but I would want to take the last few seconds to encourage a lot more the young lawyers them to step up, because it's not all about money. Sometimes you really got to demonstrate that you truly care about the people in the society and in the nation. And so sometimes even if you have to take pro bono work, yeah, I saw it go sometimes. So I don't know if this is gonna go over the hour. Okay, it has gone over the hour. No? Yeah? Okay, well, it seems as if I'm seeing some internet issues. So I guess as a result, sometimes um, um, I get bumped out for a few seconds, it seems, because my internet is pretty weak, at least at this geographic location. So let's see. Okay, well, let's continue as it seems as if the video is continuing.
Step up to the game. Step up and join in this fight.
And you know, as Marcus was talking about the cases just now, you know, one of the things that came to me was the extent to which this is being captured, because this is a historic moment. It is a fight for access that is going on in the island where Jamaican people are taking on corporate governance, corporate conglomerates. And it's interesting because to the extent to which we saw the media covering the Wandan gang case, line by line, as my father said, must it not the Bible, precept upon precept and line upon line, the whole thing coming at us day in, day out, what every single gangster says, we get that information, but I don't hear or see that coverage coming out of the courts for this fight. For on behalf of the people. It's interesting that the media, which celebrated themselves last night or sometime this week and gave themselves awards, have literally turned a blind eye to this fight on behalf of the people. It is shocking to me. But then to go on to say, Dr. Goff, of the 4 cases that are ongoing simultaneously now, where is there any that is closer to completion, or is this going to be an ongoing process, and for how long?
Right, so they're varying stages, but none of us yet reached trial, so still in the preliminary stages of, I think, discussion, so, right, we have seen that even while there are some challenges, there have been, in some instances, a willingness to discuss, to see what's possible in terms of what to implement, and so we are pursuing those discussions to see, if they can give some fruit. So I think next year for sure, we will be seeing, whether we will be able to go to a settlement or to trial. And so I think things will be definitely in the court speaking about next year.
I want to draw your attention to something that I know you're very aware of, might have been involved yourself, the fight for Winifred Beach. That also went through the courts. And I remember the big celebration that we had. This program went to Winifred Beach. We broadcast live from there, just celebrating the win against those who would want to deny access to the people, UDC inclusive, many years ago. But this seems to be a tenuous situation, because it seems like an ongoing challenge. It seems as if there's also another situation that has arisen, and I'm not quite sure if it's still ongoing, where Winifred Beach might also be up again for grabs.
Yes. So, yes, I was involved. The issue there is really that, apart from access, which we got the access right clearly in the court through a consent order after several months of mediation several years ago, and the title for the land that adjoins the beach was separated, still in the DC name, but preserved for the public access. The issue, though, is, right, how the beach is managed. Because when there's a proposal by a government agency to come into a beach space, to manage the beach space, to license it out to others to run, and others really sometimes run community decades. They have swept and maintained, kept, promoted, and they are the ones who are pursuing the beach are being told that they may now face eviction, and new persons being brought in, along with bathroom and other kinds of facilities. Then there is another issue there, because persons were in the community, maintaining the space, have that linked to the space by family and by where they reside, are being excluded from having the chance to earn, as they have always done, from that space.
So here we have another issue.
Another issue is there too, because they're the ones, again, who are going to be displaced and external people brought in. And the whole framework of the thing that then lost its community feel and its community involvement.
So there are lessons to be learned from Winifred.
Definitely so.
The four that...
And so, yes. If I should add, when you look at Winifred Beach, that is maintained by the community, and you look at Armani Cove in Montego Bay, where the Tournament Enhancement Funds and PPD with UDC develop a beach. I asked someone which one of these spaces that you'd rather go to. Is a Winifred Beach.
Yes.
Because as I keep mentioning, beaches are living ecosystems. You cannot come in and dump up tons of concrete. You cannot start introducing killing pools on a beach and include chlorine. You cannot remove the natural vegetation. You cannot do these things. The beach must function as how nature intended the beach to function. And so there is a caution here that you just can't come in to say you're going to develop a beach and transform the landscape. So that is one thing, the natural landscape. And of course, Marcus talk about the economic interest and the interest of the community. You can't lose those. You have to maintain and empower people within the space to continue to operate. And this is why the Winifred Benevolent Society has drafted up their plan, submitted it to UDC and UPD to say this is what they would like in place. Proper parking away from the beach. Move the laboratory away from the beach. Utilizing aspects of the land so they can now properly, just continue to run the beach in a more environmentally friendly space. And they are refusing to do that. They want to come in and control and take over and build another Armani Cove in Winifred, and it not going to happen.
No, it will not happen. So the four that are in court now, what are those four, Marcus?
So those four are Barbani Beach, Miami Bay Beach, Little Duns River, and the Blue Lagoon.
All right. The Minister, Samuda, has made a declaration from the political stage. He has said that the Prime Minister has told him that Little Duns River must be reopened before Christmas, which is December 25. But this is already a case that is in court. Have they said anything to you or to Jabem? Anything?
Well, we went to court on that matter just Friday, and it seems that there's more to come. Apparently the minister made an announcement, and that, for what I understand, that wasn't necessarily part of any cohesive strategy. So we're all waiting to hear exactly what's going to be coming of that statement. But at this point, we have no further details.
All right. In the meantime, the struggle continues, but victory is certain. I want to thank you both, Dr. Devon Taylor, Dr. Marcus Goff, for coming on this morning and helping us to understand a bit more what all of this entails in terms of, in a minute, because we're totally out of time, in terms of the public's participation and how persons who are listening in. Devon, you talk about the attorneys just now. I'm sure one of the things we have to this in listenership into this program, we have a whole heap of attorneys. We can tell you that. So speak to the public and those who are thinking, I need to participate in this. I need your help.
Yes, we need Jamaicans, rank and file, to engage and demand this. This is a demand that the nation needs to make of our policymakers, that we need the law to change. And Jamaicans, we all deserve, better. Our ancestors never fight this land for us to give up our sovereignty to the coastline. We need to over that completely we need to stand up and demand this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Goff. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Great work. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Marcus Goff, Dr. Devon Taylor, they have a struggle for access to the beach, in the words of His Imperial Majesty the Emperor Haile Selassie I. Unless the rights of the least of men are as assiduously protected as those of the greatest, the seeds of confidence will fall on barren soil. Morning, Jerry.
Morning, Carbon.
All right, so that's where we're gonna end. As she's gonna get into a whole other discussion, which I probably will listen to at some other time, but I don't necessarily want to take up much more of your time. 1 hour 10 minutes, I think, at this point is pretty good. Yeah, and seemingly when I look at the video, I'm seeing some skip in the seconds, which is telling me basically that this is not streaming smoothly. At least I think so. That there are some issues which I think is as a result of the internet, which is something that I guess I have to look at and address. However, it was a pleasure being with you and looking forward to more continued live presentations. Here is going to be where it's at in the not too distant future. So keep checking out our YouTube page. The number of other things that will be coming from this source. I'll be more active on this side. Until then, more times. Enough love, Rastafari. One love every time.